We now do our combat demonstration, and remember what I said about the decisions you make in combat being more important than what your character build is. And that will be true here. So when watching this, keep an eye out for why they're making the decisions that they're making as they adjust to the battlefield and how they're working with their teammates. Two caveats. First, I'm going to be pretty slow in the first part of the combat because I'm assuming viewers have zero knowledge about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so it's going to get faster. The second thing is that this encounter was made with the encounter building system and is an extreme fight. Extreme means that the monsters are relatively equal in strength compared to the party. So our 5 level 1 human fighters are enslaved and must fight for their freedom. They've been put in an arena and are fighting a set of monsters in front of a large crowd. The arena surrounds a 10-foot deep pit with a narrow plank of wood crossing it. There are sets of stairs leading up to a 10-foot high elevated platform where the monsters are behind portcullises. There are these tall columns of rock as well. The first decision to make is actually before combat. In Pathfinder 2e, you have exploration activities, which are basically what you're doing when not in an encounter. And Arthur is going to be scouting, giving a +1 circumstance bonus to every party member's initiative check. Everyone else will be defending, just being aware of potential danger. And in the case of Sorenbor, our sword and board fighter, he will have his shield raised. It will be adding 2 to his armor class before his first turn. The announcer declares the beginning of the fight, the crowd goes wild, and all of the combatants roll initiative. First is Bonehead. The crowd is chanting his name. He is very popular. He is wielding a shield and longsword. He is a nasty looking one. His eyes gleam with intelligence, and he moves forward right here. So he takes 2 actions, stride actions, to move right there. With this third action, he's going to raise his shield, which gives him a +2 bonus to his armor class, which is now 21. And he says, "You will die." Lewis is a dramatic showman. He is a duelist, and he is going to have a fighting style of using one weapon, in this case a whip. He will have a free hand with which he's going to harry enemies. He can do all of the athletics maneuvers with a free hand. His human ancestry lets him choose a heritage, and that will be versatile heritage. And that gives him a free general feat. His general feat is fleet. He gets a +5 increase to his speed. It goes from 25 to 30. He wants to do that because he wants to cover more territory with his mobility. With his ancestry feat, he chooses haughty obstinacy. It reflects his personality. He is not going to be controlled by anyone. Then he has a background. He was a field medic, which gives him a couple of boosts, and the medicine skill and the warfare lore skill, and the battle medicine skill feat. That is the skill feat that lets him use healer's tools to heal others in combat, which is perfect for him because he has that free hand for his healer's tools that are worn on his person. He has chainmail, which makes sense since he's invested in strength, and that combined with his dex +1 lets him have that maximum level 1 AC of 18. His high strength also lets him ignore this medium armor's penalty to some of his skills and its penalty to his speed. And he has a whip, which interestingly enough is a finesse weapon, which means he can use his dexterity bonus on attack rolls with it. But he has a high strength. His strength is still useful here, though, because dexterity does not add to his damage. It also is a reach weapon, which lets him reach 10 feet away. Fighters get 6 skills at level 1 if they have average intelligence, 2 from his background. He also gets training in athletics or acrobatics. He's going to put that in athletics because of his high strength, and he gets 3 more. And those are going to go into nature, religion, and stealth. And for his class feat, he has chosen a snagging strike. He can spend 1 action to try to strike. That's the damaging attack strike. And with his other hand, free hand, he can grab onto the enemy if it's within his reach so that they're flat-footed. Flat-footed means they're more vulnerable. They get a -2 circumstance penalty to armor class. So what he does, he's going to stride 2 times to go here, and going upstairs is difficult terrain. So when he gets to this spot, he needs 55 feet of movement, which he has because of the fleet feat. With his third action, he is going to use his whip to trip this Kobold Warrior number 2. Normally you need a free hand and use your free hand to do an athletics maneuver, but because the whip has the trip trait, he can use trips with the whip and use its reach. He also could disarm enemies with the whip, Indiana Jones style. So he's going to do an athletics check. Tripping is contested against the reflex DC of the enemy. Because the Kobold has a reflex save of 7, Lewis needs to get a 17. A 26 is a success. Now, if he had critically succeeded, it would have done an additional 1d6 bludgeoning damage in addition to making the Kobold prone. What prone does is it makes them flat-footed, and the only move actions they can take are to crawl or to stand up. And they also have a -2 circumstance penalty to their attacks. Also, if Lewis were to critically fail, he would be falling prone instead. Sorenbor is next. Sorenbor used to work on a pirate ship, and he has seen a lot of death in his life. He's a grizzled veteran, and he's determined to not die himself or have his allies die. So he's going to focus on defense. So he's going to be a sword and board fighter. He takes Versatile Heritage, which gives him a general feat, and he also takes the Ancestry feat General Training, which also gives him a general feat. There are general feats that make him more survivable. Toughness gives him a bonus hit point per level, and also makes it easier for him to stabilize if he's dying. Die Hard makes it so that he has to be at dying 5 in order to die. Most characters die when their dying value goes up to 4. His background was a deckhand, which gave him a couple of ability boosts, and he also is trained in acrobatics and sailing lore, and he gains the Catfall skill feat, which lets him avoid damage while falling. For his equipment, he takes a longsword and a steel shield, and is wearing breastplate. He also put a shield boss on his shield, which increases the damage from 1d4 to 1d6. Yes, you can attack with the shield in Pathfinder. It does bludgeoning damage. He also has a repair kit so that he can repair that shield when he absorbs damage with it. Sorenbor puts his skill trainings into crafting for the repair, athletics, survival, and stealth. For his class feat, he will choose Reactive Shield, which lets him use his reaction to raise his shield against an attack, which can even prevent that attack. Sorenbor wants to get into the action and wants to do a long jump across this pit. First, he's going to raise his shield just in case that skeleton attacks him on the way. Not likely, because a longsword's not a reach weapon anyway. But long jump takes 2 actions, and the GM says he'll need a 12 because it's about 10 feet across. The athletics result is the number of feet that he can travel with a jump. Rolls athletics, and a 26 will succeed. He had decided to jump straight forward. Also, he cannot jump farther than his speed, which is 25 feet, by the way. Next is the Zombie Brute. Zombies' slowness is reflected by the permanent slowed 1 condition. They have 1 less action per turn. So they have 2 actions and a reaction. So this zombie is going to slowly make its way here, move up to right there, and end its turn. Billy is next. He is a former farmer, and he is a popular guy, and he used to wield a 2-handed scythe on the farm. So he's going to be a bully. He's going to have that build. He's going to wield a 2-handed weapon and push people around. And he has the Versatile Heritage feat. With that bonus feat, he's going to take a skill feat. Okay, general feats are like this, and skill feats are a subset of general feats. And he decides to take a feat that lets him climb better. With his Ancestry feat, he gets a bonus general feat, and he gets Titan Wrestler. Most characters are limited to using athletics maneuvers to creatures up to 1 size larger than they are. But he can do things against things that are 2 sizes larger than he is. When he's legendary in athletics, 3 sizes. So he could shove a Tarask. His background is farmhand, which gives him some ability boosts, also training in athletics and farming lore, and he gets the Assurance skill feat with athletics, What assurance does is that when he does an athletics check, he can decide not to roll for it and instead just add his proficiency modifier to 10, and that's his result. It tends to be a below average roll, but he is assured of the result. And it's a good thing to do in certain situations. It's not that good at low levels when he's only trained, but when he becomes expert and that proficiency bonus increases, which also, remember, includes your level, he can do amazing things and be guaranteed that he will succeed at them. For equipment, he's going to wear chainmail, and he's going to have a guisarme as his two-handed weapon. It's a reach weapon, and we'll learn more about it soon. He's also going to get a minor healing potion. For his class feat, he's taking power attack, which can only be used with a two-handed weapon, and it costs 2 actions and lets him do more damage on his attack if he hits. He thinks about jumping across the pit, but he also sees that they're being attacked from behind, and he wants to make sure the archer isn't harmed. So what he's going to do is he's going to stride next to the archer, and he's going to ready a grapple of the homunculus if it gets within his reach. Readying something costs 2 actions, and what you ready has to be a single action. And this lets you define the timing of when you do your readied action. He says that once it gets within his reach, that he will do this. So it will interrupt the homunculus's movement if it gets within his reach. If he does his readied action, that will be his use of his reaction. Before doing this, he also lets go of his guisarme so that he can grapple. And when you ready an action, that ends your turn. Next is the Kobold Warrior. And this kobold observed Lewis during the practice that he has attack of opportunity. Most creatures do not have attack of opportunity. That allows for more dynamic battles in which there's more movement. What this means is that Lewis is kind of locking down both kobolds right now because he can use his reach weapon to react to a number of things that they do. Attack of opportunity triggers on more things than just leaving Lewis's reach. It triggers if he does a move action. So if he were to move here, that would trigger an attack of opportunity. Also, if he manipulates something, like puts away his spear or uses his hands, things that have the manipulate trait, that provokes an attack of opportunity. And also, if Lewis critically succeeds on his strike, that disrupts the manipulate action. So spellcasters, and most of their spells use somatic actions, have manipulate, can possibly be disrupted by this, and they waste their spell. Also, ranged attacks provoke an attack of opportunity, so the kobold does not want to throw the spear either. What he'll do instead is step right here. And this is the one move action that does not provoke reactions, and it only travels 5 feet, but that is why you do it. And with his next action, he will now try to stab Lewis with his spear. And an 18 will hit. And the Kobold Warrior does 4 damage. So 4 piercing damage is applied to Lewis. The Kobold Warrior then uses its special ability, Hurried Retreat. And Lewis could hit him with the whip now, but declines to do so because he has only 1 reaction. Arthur is next. And he is not the strongest in the group. He's more lithe, never saw himself as a warrior type. And he did very well in school. He has a scholar background. Well, he wants to be an archer. And so he's making sure he has a high dexterity. And his heritage is skilled heritage. He sees himself as supporting the party, and he wants to get a wide variety of skills. And that includes the knowledge skills. So he's choosing this heritage, which gives him 1 more skill training. And with his ancestry feat, he'll choose cooperative nature, so that when he aids an ally on a check, he gets a +4 circumstance bonus to his aiding check. His background is scholar. That gives him some boosts. And training in one of the knowledge skills, he chooses arcana. Also gives him the academia lore skill. And he gets assurance for arcana. For his equipment, he is going to get leather armor, and he's going to have a longbow and a short sword in case he gets forced into melee. The short sword is a finesse weapon, which lets him use his dexterity bonus for attack rolls. And he does not add dexterity to damage. That doesn't happen in Pathfinder 2e, except for one exception. But he is going to invest some in his strength so that he can get that bonus to damage. He also has Thieves' Tools, because as we said, he is going to be good in a lot of skills. And with his skilled heritage and +2 intelligence, he has a total of 9 skills to be trained in. For his class feat, he's going to choose Point Blank Shot, which we will see in a second. For his first action, he looks at this mechanical creature, which the GM described to his player, and he decides to recall knowledge about it. He is going to use Arcana, because that is applied to constructs. And this is a secret roll, because it's possible he might get false information by rolling a critical failure. So in situations like that, it's a secret roll, and it has the secret trait the action does. So the GM rolls secretly, and some GMs, like me, don't ask the player to say a specific skill, though that is required by rules as written. I just check it against the best skill that they have. If 15 succeeds, with the success, he learns a important piece of information. This GM says that this is a assistant to spellcasters. Although it is a construct, it has its own intelligence, so it's actually susceptible to mental effects, unlike most constructs. Also learns that it has a poison attack. For Arthur's second action, he could make an attack against the homunculus. However, his longbow has the volley 30 feet trait. What that means is that an enemy that is within that range, if he tries to attack it, his attack roll is going to have a -2 circumstance penalty. And this is an incentive to not be close to the front lines. This is the downside to a longbow, which normally does a d8 of damage versus a shortbow's d6, and also has the longer range increment of 100 feet. He could move back to avoid the volley penalty, but the homunculus and other creatures might move up to him, which he'll want to attack. But he has the class feat Point Blank Shot. It is a stance. A stance is an action that you can only take when you're in an encounter. This costs 1 action, and it gives him benefits, and sometimes stances give a drawback. In this case, it lets him ignore the volley penalty of his weapons. And if he had a short bow, something that did not have a volley penalty, it would give a +2 circumstance bonus to damage. Well, he's going to do that now. Also, this has the open trait. The open trait means that he cannot have made any attacks up to this point, and he can only do 1 open action per turn. And with his last action, he's going to attack the homunculus. And this 19 is going to succeed, and he will roll damage with his longbow. 4 damage with the longbow. There are weapons that are called compulsive bows that have the propulsive trait, which would add half of his strength bonus to the damage. However, those are too expensive for level 1 characters who start with 15 gold. So he does not have that yet. So he does not add anything to his damage, and 4 damage is applied. The Kobold Warrior is next, and he's in a pickle. Standing up has the move trait, so that will provoke an attack of opportunity. Crawling will do that also. And he has a -2 penalty to his attacks, so he's just going to have to try to avoid this blow. And now Lewis is now going to try to crack that whip. Oh, a 11 is going to miss, so that was... And good luck for the Kobold Warrior. He wants to attack Lewis now, and he is going to throw that spear. A 13 will miss. With his last action, he is going to move here, and he knows that Lewis already uses reactions, so he will be safe doing so. 2-Weapon is our 2-weapon fighter. She used to be a mercenary. She liked her job. 2-weapon fighting does not give bonus attacks. Because of the 3-action economy, every single attack you make uses one of your actions. So what's the benefit of 2-weapon fighting? Well, first of all, for all martial characters, having 2 weapons gives you more choices. You might want 1 weapon for one situation and 1 for another. Plus, if one of them has the agile trait, it is more accurate as a second attack or third attack. Attacks have the multiple attack penalty if you attack more than once during your turn. Your second attack during your turn will have a -5 penalty. Your following attacks will have a -10 penalty. But if your strike has the agile trait, then that penalty is reduced to -4 and -8. Agile weapons also tend to be a little weaker, and so having two weapons allows you to have that strong opening attack while also having the advantage of accurate subsequent attacks. And in addition, if you're a fighter, you can take the double slice feat at level 1, which we will see soon. Okay, so with her heritage, she chooses versatile heritage. She wants to get fleet to get more speed because she wants to get into combat more quickly. She does not want to have to spend actions reaching the enemy. She also takes the popular natural ambition ancestry feat that humans can take that lets you get a bonus level 1 class feat. So her bonus fighter feat that she's going to take is sudden charge. We will see this in a second. She has the warrior background, which gives her a couple of boosts and gives her training in intimidation and warfare lore. She also has the intimidating glare skill feat. Most characters, if you're trying to frighten an enemy, it's called demoralize, say something in that target's language. And if you don't know that target's language or they don't have a language, your check has a -4 penalty. And intimidating glare, she gets to avoid that penalty. She can frighten a bear just by looking at it. For equipment, she'll take a rapier and a star knife. The star knife can be thrown, in addition to being an agile weapon. She wants to be accurate with her thrown weapons, so she makes sure she has some dexterity. She also has healer's tools and a minor elixir of life. She also wants to kind of support the party. To get a high charisma, she also took a voluntary flaw and took 2 flaws here so that she could be good at both dexterity and charisma and strength at the first step of ability score generation. So that gives her a 16 charisma. So what she'll do is sudden charge. Sudden charge has the open trait and also the flourish trait. That means there's a limit of doing 1 flourish thing per turn. So she's going to spend her 2 actions to move twice to go right here and get into a flanking position with her ally against that skeleton. However, our skeleton has an attack of opportunity. Some enemies have this also. So when she's leaving this square, the skeleton's going to make an attack against her. And a +10 to attack, that's pretty high. 16, she was lucky there. Well, she's now flanking, basically requires being on opposite sides of an enemy, which makes Bonehead flat-footed to those who are flanking him, to their melee attacks. So she's now going to make her attack that is part of her sudden charge. And a 27 is going to succeed. It's important to note that if the skeleton had not raised its shield, this would have been a critical hit because the AC would have only been 17 in that instance. But because he raised the shield, it's only a regular hit. So she's going to roll regular damage. And she's going to roll 5 damage, which unfortunately for her, she's about to find out that it has resistance 5 to piercing damage. So her damage is going to be reduced to 0. Seeing this, she warns the party about this, and she has an action left, thanks to her sudden charge, to get out of the way. She wants to get away from these scary-looking enemies, including that giant zombie. So she's going to move here, and she noted that the zombie did not attack her on the way in, so she's confident it has no attack of opportunity, and Bonehead already used its reaction. Next is the homunculus. The homunculus is going to fly over. Now, it is a tiny creature, so that means it has a reach of 0, and it's going to have to enter the space, Arthur's space, in order to attack Arthur. But we remembered that Billy had readied an action, ready to grapple, once he got reach against it. So he's going to do that now. Grapple is an athletics check that's contested against the target's fortitude DC, and the homunculus has a 12, so this shouldn't be too hard. That succeeds. So that means the homunculus now has the grabbed condition, which means that it is flat-footed as well as immobilized. That means it cannot do any move actions immediately. That takes effect immediately. So it cannot continue its journey into Arthur's space. That's one of the problems of being tiny. It also cannot attack Arthur or the person grappling it because of its lack of reach. Now, if Billy had critically succeeded on his grapple, the homunculus would be restrained now instead, which is even more restrictive. And if he had critically failed, then the homunculus has a choice of either being the one grappling Billy or making him fall prone. So, okay, it has 2 actions left. So what it's going to do now, it can try to escape. Escape is contested by the grappler's athletics DC. In this case, it's 17 for Billy. The homunculus uses their unarmed attack bonus or athletics or acrobatics to try to get out of it. So it's going to use its jaws attack bonus, and it succeeds. So it is no longer grabbed. The escape action has the attack trait, so that means it contributes to the multiple attack penalty. So if the homunculus were to make an attack right now, it would have a -5 penalty. Well, the homunculus does not want to be near this pair of larger fighters, so it's going to fly upward. It has a 5-foot altitude now, and it's going to fly over here and upward. However, Arthur has not used a reaction yet. And Arthur has a free hand. He only holds a bow with one hand. He uses that second hand when drawing an arrow and knocking it. So Arthur could actually use a fist attack right now as an attack of opportunity, and will do so. And a 14 misses. The homunculus had an AC of 17. Bonehead is next, and he is a cunning foe. He is going to attack Sorenbor with the longsword. That is a 24, and it will hit, and that does 7 damage. Sorenbor is going to now shield block. What shield block does is we check the shield's hardness, which is 5. That gets subtracted from the incoming damage. And the result of 2 is subtracted both from Sorenbor's health and from the shield's health. Foundry has a nice little automation for this. The shield, if it were to reach half health, would become broken and so no longer usable. If it reaches 0 hit points, it becomes destroyed and it cannot even be repaired. Bonehead now says, "You fool," is going to drop his shield and shove Sorenbor with his free hand. It will be contested by Sorenbor's Fortitude DC, which is 17, and Bonehead will do an athletics check, which will furthermore suffer the multiple attack penalty. 19 will succeed. This shoves Sorenbor 5 feet, and as part of the success of shove, he can choose to travel this distance also. If he had critically succeeded, he would travel farther. If he had critically failed, he himself would have fallen prone instead. Sorenbor does not automatically fall into the pit, because characters have the grab and edge reaction. And this is what Bonehead planned all along. He baited Sorenbor's reaction by attacking him, knowing that Sorenbor would use his shield block, and now Sorenbor has nothing to react with. So Sorenbor falls straight to the ground. If Sorenbor had still had his reaction, he would be able to do a reflex save and possibly catch the edge. However, he would have needed a free hand to do that. The only way he would have not fallen down is if he either had a free hand or if he had critically succeeded, which means that something he's holding catches onto the edge. So he was a bit vulnerable because of not having a free hand. But fortunately for Sorenbor, not to Bonehead's knowledge, Sorenbor has the catfall feat. So what normally happens is that when you fall more than 5 feet, you become prone and you take fall damage equal to half the number of feet you fell. So he'd be taking 5 damage down being prone. But he has the catfall feat, which every time he falls, he gets to treat the fall as being 10 feet less. So because he takes no damage, he does not become prone. He just lands on his feet, and he is happy that he grew up on a pirate ship. The crowd goes wild and is chanting, "Bonehead, Bonehead." With his last action, Bonehead picks up the shield from the adjacent space. So Lewis has a choice. He can decide to move here and benefit from cover against that northern kobold if after he takes care of this one, hopefully. But that requires 2 strides to get there. He's more likely to succeed at knocking out this kobold if he only spends 1 action and is out in the open. So he's going to do that instead, and he has the snagging strike feat to try to guarantee this knockout. So snagging strike, although he has reach with his whip, snagging strike requires that his free hand, that he's able to reach the target. What he'll do is now attack with the whip right now. A 21 will hit, so it will do a d4 plus strength damage, which is low for a weapon, but whips have other advantages. That's 6 damage to the kobold. And because of snagging strike, with his other hand, he grabs that kobold by the scruff of the neck, making it flat-footed. Some people drive too loud. And to this next attack. And that 23 will succeed. Almost a crit. And this will knock out the kobold. 2 cheers from the crowd as the first combatant is removed from the battle. Next is Sorenbor. He needs both hands free to climb, so he is going to stow away his shield and longsword and stride here. He wants to climb the opposite wall. Cannot climb yet because that was all 3 actions. He is unfortunately not Billy over here, who has the combat climber feat, who does not need 2 free hands to climb. Next is the zombie brute, who strides over and has that 10-foot reach, and with a big meaty fist is going to try to strike at 2 weapon with a plus 11 to hit. A 19 will hit. Rolled only an 8, and will do 17 bludgeoning damage against her. And it also has the improved push 5 feet free action, so it pushes her 5 feet as well. That was spectacular. The crowd goes wild at this violence. Fortunately for her, the zombie is out of actions and also pushed her out of its own reach. So it is now Billy's turn. And at this point, Arthur's player looks at everybody and says, we need to regroup. Those are some 2 strong foes on the other side. 2 weapon come back here so that Lewis can come here and heal you with his battle medicine. Hearing this, Billy decides that he is going to try to recall some weakness to Bonehead, to this skeletal champion, seeing that piercing damage doesn't seem to help here. So he's going to do the knowledge skill for undead creatures, which is religion. He is not trained in religion, and he does not have a wisdom bonus, so this is a +0. So, there's a fair chance he won't succeed. However, he figures it's the best use of his action. The GM, seeing a natural 20 after rolling that, tells him a good bit of information, which is that this is an intelligent creature, that bludgeoning damage will not meet any resistance from the skeleton, and also that its weakest saving throw is will. Actually, it might be susceptible to fear. So that's some information that he shares with the group. Next is he walks over here to this spot. He is, with his third action, going to restore his 2-handed grip to the Gizarm. That is an action tax, basically, for wielders of 2-handed weapons. If you let go, which is a free action, it costs an action to restore your grip. The Kobold Warrior is next and sees the threat posed by Lewis and does not want to get closer. He is wielding these spears, and so what he'll do with his first action is he's going to drop the spear and pull out his sling. His second action is going to be to load the sling, and his third action will be to fire at Lewis. So there is cover because of this pillar. So Lewis is going to have a +2 circumstance bonus to armor class. Okay, 23 is going to hit. That's going to be 4 damage to Lewis. The warrior could have leaned out to avoid this cover bonus to AC, but that would have required an action too. Okay, Arthur is next. Arthur knows that his bow would do piercing damage and therefore would be resisted by Bonehead. So he's going to aim at the zombie brute. He also is going to do a tactic using a skill called Create a Diversion, where he does a gesture or says something that tries to distract the foe. If he succeeds, he's going to be hidden to the enemy. And hidden is one of the degrees of stealth you can gain in the game that makes a target flat-footed to you. So he is not trained in deception, but this zombie is not very perceptive. He just needs to beat a 14. So rolls deception versus perception DC, and that succeeds. So the zombie brute becomes flat-footed if it cared. This is a mental action, create a diversion, and the zombie is mindless and is immune to all mental effects. So it's just going around, lumbering around, you know, hitting things in its wake. So Arthur uses a second action to fire that longbow. It's within his volley range, but his point-blank shot ignores that. Oh, and a natural 20 means that's a critical hit. And bows have the deadly D10 trait. That means when they critically hit, not only is it double damage, and in Pathfinder you double the flat bonus to damage on a crit as well, but you add another D10 of damage to it. So this is going to be the damage. That's going to be a 15. Pretty impressive for a bow. And the zombie does not have any resistance to piercing damage. With his last action, Arthur is going to prepare to aid. He has the cooperative nature feat, so he's really good at aiding and helping other people with their checks. So he informs Billy that he's going to help Billy on his next attack with a distracting arrow. Two-Weapon is next and needs to get back to the party. And she is going to run. She is, well, there is no run action, but she's going to stride here and move right there with her first two actions. What she's going to do is release her star knife so that she can pull out her elixir of life. Next, the homunculus flies in and is going to enter Two-Weapon space. But because she threatened this square that the homunculus was leaving, she can do an attack of opportunity even as she's trying to heal herself. A 23 will hit and do 9 damage. This homunculus is regretting this, and the homunculus is now going to try to bite Two-Weapon, which would knock her out. And that fails spectacularly, and it's going to fly away again. Arthur could do an attack of opportunity, but declines because he wants to save his reaction for aiding. Bonehead is going to walk around, has to walk around this pillar, and go for Billy. And Billy could have done an attack of opportunity there, but is going to decline. And guess what Bonehead's going to do? Bonehead, he's going to release that shield again and try to push Billy into the pit. So it needs to beat a 17, and a 16 fails. That was close. So Lewis is next, and seeing the danger posed to his allies is going to run over. And fortunately has that fleet feet and can reach this in 2 strides. And with his last action, he is going to do battle medicine. He is going to try to, with his free hand, use his healer's tools to help. And then it's he needs a 15 to succeed on this check. He succeeds, and the result is going to be 2d8. Now, if he were to critically succeed, he would get 4d8 healing. But, 6, not very good. And if he were to critically fail, he would actually inflict 1d8 slashing damage. A creature can benefit from his battle medicine once per day. Sorenbor is next. He is going to do the climb action. He is flat-footed while doing this. 17 succeeds, so he climbs 5 feet. And if he had critically succeeded, he would be climbing 10 feet now. And he's going to climb again. That succeeds also. So he's going to be moving here in the meantime. With his last action, he's going to take his shield in hand. He's not raising it, but he has it in hand. Next is the zombie brute. It is going to lumber around. And as it moves here, Billy had saved his reaction for this. He's going to attack the zombie brute. He threatens, the 10-foot reach threatens the second diagonal in Pathfinder. So it moving from here to here means he can make this attack. And the archer is going to do his distracting arrow now, and he can make an attack roll. He has a +4 circumstance bonus because of his cooperative nature. So he is now going to loose that arrow. The DC for aiding is 20. And he got a critical success. He's been really hot with the dice. So instead of the normal +1, he's going to give a +2 circumstance bonus to Billy's check. And a critical failure would give a -1 circumstance penalty to the check. So you don't always want to be helping. So he is going to attack this zombie with a big old bonus. So get a +11 against the zombie. A 21 succeeds. And this is going to do the following damage. Oh, well, not that impressive. 5 damage. However, we all learn that it has a weakness to slashing. It has a weakness 10 to slashing, in fact. So it takes 15 slashing damage instead of 5. Weaknesses are great in Pathfinder. Even a single point of damage, if it is something they have weakness to, triggers the entire additional damage. Continues moving here. That was a nice turn. That was a nice reaction for Billy. What Billy's going to do now is he has a Gizarm, which has the trip trait. That means he can trip with it, and it's a reach weapon, just like the whip. So he is going to do that against the zombie brute. So a 13 is not very good. However, the GM declares that it is falling, and it indeed has a very low reflex DC, only 13. Billy notes this because he has the assurance feat, which would mean that without rolling, his athletics check would have had a result of 13. One of the benefits of assurance is that it ignores all other bonuses and penalties. So he could have attacked Bonehead as his first action and then tripped the zombie with assurance, and it would not have the multiple attack penalty. It would just be a 13 and succeed. So Billy does not want to stand here anymore because he knows Bonehead could try to shove him off. So what he's going to do is he's going to step here, and then, now that he's outside the skeleton's reach, he is going to stride here. So this way, he is threatening the zombie brute and can do an attack while it stands up. And you kind of can kite a zombie, by the way. Billy could trip it with assurance and then move away and solo this zombie brute. This Kobold Warrior has a clear shot at Lewis. And so what it will do is reload and then create a diversion against Lewis. Not very good deception, though. Okay, good roll, though. And DC 18. And so that makes Lewis flat-footed to this attack. And that hits exactly because it was flat-footed. So, and not only that, it gets its damage, but it has sneak attack damage. This Kobold Warrior has sneak attack. And so create, diversion, and feint are great things for all martials to use, but also really good for rogues. That does 4 damage. So Arthur, because 2 weapons holding this in her hand, Arthur's going to interact and grab that from her hand and then feed it to her, which is an action. So it heals 1d6 hit points and also gives a bonus against poisons and disease. So only 2 health, but every hit point counts. So with his last action, he is going to fire an arrow at the zombie brute and hope to get another crit now that it's flat-footed. And a 22 fails to crit by 1. He would have critted with a 14 on his roll. Zombies don't have high AC. Oh, 1 damage is not very helpful, though. 2 weapon is next, and she is going to pick up that star knife she dropped, and she's going to move around that skeletal champion, then use that star knife, which is a slashing weapon, she knows, against the zombie brute. And that will be a crit. And star knives are deadly D6 weapons, so this is going to do a good amount of damage. So 13, and it triggers the weakness of the zombie brute, so that's going to be 23 slashing damage. The homunculus is next, and it has no safe way to approach because of, well, Lewis has a whip and can whip it. It's going to fly around here behind this pillar, and it's going to do the hide action. It's going to do a stealth check that is secret to it. So if a player were hiding, there's my cat Megan, the GM would roll this secretly. And this will be contested by the perception DCs of all of the other creatures. It succeeds. So the GM tells the players that it is now hidden to them. So if they were to try to target it, they would have a 50-50 chance of failing to target it with an effect. But it tries to increase its stealth even further by trying to sneak somewhere. So it's going to try to sneakily fly closer. It's going to do this because it has to travel at half speed, and it wants to get in a good ambush spot that is closer. So this is yet another secret stealth check. Succeeds because actually it benefits from the cover of the where it is sneaking to. The sneak action needs to end behind a position of cover or within concealment. So a successful sneak makes it undetected to everybody it succeeded against. If it had failed, it would stay hidden, which would mean they still know what square it ends up in. And if it had critically failed, it would be observed by the party. Bonehead now picks up his shield that he had dropped. Fortunately for Bonehead, he is not within the reach of any of their weapons, because picking up something is an interact action. But he's about to enter a dangerous area. He can walk through allies. So what he's going to do is he's going to move over here and try to knock out 2-weapon. That will hit, unfortunately, and inflict 8 damage to 2-weapon, bringing her down to 1 hit point again. It is now Lewis's turn, who does not know where that homunculus went. So he is going to seek, which is an action, which can be a 30-foot cone or a 15-foot burst within sight. So what he's going to do is do a 15-foot burst here. He's going to see if he can find where that homunculus went. So he does a perception check against the homunculus stealth DC, and this succeeds. And he finds out that the homunculus is right here. Because its stealth DC was 17, benefiting from this cover, this was a regular success. So it goes from undetected to hidden. If he had critically succeeded, it would become observed. Because it's hidden, he still has a 50-50 chance to miss it if he were to try to strike it right now. So his next action, he could point it out to the party and make sure everyone knows that it is right there, making it hidden to everybody in the party. That was the point out action, by the way. So what he's going to do instead is walk right here, which means that it no longer benefits from cover against him. So he no longer, it becomes observed to him. So he's going to use his last action to whip it. And oh, that fails. Sorenborn knows that the zombie brute is about to act, so he's going to move over and try to take care of it. He strides here, and it's not quite flanking it, but it is flat-footed anyway. So he swings his longsword, and that 11 is going to +7 succeeds and damage it and trigger its weakness to slashing. 18 damage is enough. So it went from 70 hit points down to 0 in a short span of time. He could move here to give flanking to 2-weapon, but he hopes someone else can move to that spot. And he could raise his shield, but right now it is 2-weapon who is in danger. So he's going to try to demoralize it and say he is next. So intimidation, not something he's trained in. 12 does not succeed against the Bonehead. Billy would like to get in a flanking position, but he wants to avoid that attack of opportunity from Bonehead. 30 feet to get here, and he does not have enough movement to do it in one action. He does have flanking against Bonehead, however, and he's now going to swing his Gizarm. And that 20 will succeed and inflict 7 slashing damage. It probably was a better idea for him to trip it, forcing it to stand up. So that's only 2 damage to Bonehead, and Bonehead's still near full health. He's a tough guy. Kobold Warrior will move to a different spot, try to stay safe from the archer, and reload his sling. Arthur, meanwhile, is going to try to balance across this beam and use his acrobatics skill, which he is good at, and that succeeds. He moves half speed and continues across here, and then with his last action, he is going to try to attack that pesky kobold. That will miss. 2-weapon has a choice here. She has a double slice feat. It would cost 2 actions for her to make 1 attack with each weapon that she is holding. The bad part of it, though, is that she knows it resists her rapier. It has resistance. And she's guessing that her star knife, which does slashing damage, is also going to be resisted. On the other hand, double slice is going to combine the damage of both of her strikes before applying resistance. So she could hit with both of them. What's nice about this feat also is that her second attack would not have the multiple attack penalty because it is an agile weapon. So she's now going to try to drop her rapier, freeing up her fist, which does bludgeoning damage, which is risky because releasing a weapon, although it's a free action, is going to provoke this attack of opportunity. It's a manipulate action. So Bonehead is going to do a swing at her head as she does so. And she has been lucky today. With a free hand, she now is going to punch Bonehead. And 17 will hit because of the flanking provided by Billy. And also, Bonehead did not have time to raise its shield. And that does 6 bludgeoning damage, which it cannot resist. She's also going to make a second attack, and it's an agile attack, and that hits also. So she is going to get a hero point for her creativity. Hero points are really useful. We have not had occasion to use them yet, but hero points let you re-roll a d20 check that you make. And you get to do that after you roll, so it's more useful than 5e inspiration. However, you might roll worse on that new roll, so there is still risk involved, which makes them more fun. The homunculus here is in a tricky spot. It is being threatened by Lewis's whip. It's going to step twice into Lewis's space. Step lets you move 5 feet. It does not specify that has to be a land speed. And it is going to try to bite Lewis. And that's a crit. So it's going to do double damage. That is 6 damage to Lewis. And Lewis will also possibly suffer its poison. And he's down to 1 hit point. And a 13 will fail. So he takes a 1d6 poison damage, which knocks him out. When you are knocked out, when you go down to 0 hit points, you go to dying 1. Your initiative moves to right before the effect that knocked you out. That gives the party a round to try to save you. When your next turn comes around, you do a recovery check. If you succeed, your dying value goes down. If it goes down to 0, you stabilize. If you fail, it goes up by 1. If you critically fail, it goes up by 2. You die a dying 4. What's scary here is that he is now poisoned. But because he's poisoned, at the end of his turns, he's going to have to save against the poison again. And if he fails, he's going to advance a stage in the poison, which would mean that his dying value would increase further because he's taking damage. So his dying value could increase 2 times on his turn. So things that do persistent damage and poison effects are pretty scary when it comes to death in Pathfinder, and that stays true even at high levels. It is now Bonehead's turn, and he has had it with this dual-wielding fighter. He's going to swing his sword and then knock her out. She gets to dying 1 as well. The battle is not over, and the crowd cheers for Bonehead, starts chanting his name. Next, he's going to raise his shield. He is going to step here. This is a strategic decision. He wants to force Billy, who has reach, to have to move forward and use up one of his 3 actions to get there. He also is raising his shield. He is going defensive, and we'll see how that turns out. Sorenbor is the tankiest of them all, so he is going to move past here and try to bait his attack of opportunity. Because he can use his reactive shield feat to react to it. However, Bonehead is not a bonehead and does not take the bait. Now that he's over here, Sorenbor will use his shield to attack, which does bludgeoning damage. I will note that he has a loadout of a longsword and a shield. The longsword has the versatile trait, so he can use slashing damage or piercing damage with the longsword. That combined with his shield means he has all 3 main damage types, and that was deliberate. And a 19 will fail at hitting Bonehead because Bonehead raised his shield. And then he will make, well, he feels like he has the advantage, so he's not going to raise his own shield. And he has the reactive shield feat, so he's going to go for another attack. With the shield boss, because he can attack more than once with the same weapon. And that is a critical hit. And not a whole lot of damage, 12 damage. And Bonehead uses his reaction, which he saved, to shield block that, which makes it only 7 damage instead of a kill. Well, Billy is next and is going to step here. He could swing his Gizarm, but he's going to guess it's going to resist his damage. So he's going to use his feet, Power Attack. Power Attack, if he can land it, is going to add a die of damage. So another d10 to his damage if he can connect. It costs 2 actions. Why not attack twice? Well, the resistance might apply to both of his strikes if they connect. But also his second attack would have the multiple attack penalty. This way he gets to do an accurate single strike that is good damage, which is really good to use against creatures with resistance like this one. And he is benefiting from flanking. And 17 does not succeed, again because its shield is raised. But he does have a hero point, and he is going to spend that hero point now. And that succeeds, so he will do power attack damage. So he's going to roll regular damage, add a d10. So 2d10. That is 17. That is reduced to 12, which is enough to defeat Bonehead. And the crowd goes wild. They have a new person to scream for. Bonehead is destroyed and leaves his be able to go to the afterlife. The Kobold Warrior is going to shoot a Slingstone. And that 15 misses Arthur and is going to fire. And that's going to be 6 damage. Lewis, at the start of his turn, has to do a recovery check. I realized that Lewis should be at dying 2 since it was a critical hit that it knocked him out. Arguably it was the poison, but they're kind of simultaneous. Anyway, the jury's out. So he is now going to make his recovery check. And he needs to get a 12 because he's at dying 2 right now. So his dying value goes up to 1 because he succeeded. If he had critically succeeded, he would lower his dying value by 2. And he now makes a fortitude save at the end of his turn against that poison effect. That succeeds. So the poison is resisted, it wears off. The homunculus is now going to try to hide, and it does not know that it failed. 2-Weapon is next and needs to recover and succeeds, critically succeeds. She loses the dying condition. And when you lose the dying condition in this game, you gain your wounded condition increases by 1. And the significance of that is that if she were to be dying again, her dying value, instead of being dying 1, would be increased by her then current wounded value. So if she were to be healed and then knocked out again, instead of being at dying 1, she'd go straight to dying 2. And if she were then stabilized again, her wounded value would increase to 2. So it gets increasingly perilous for a character if you are healed up from 0 over and over again. In fact, if she were critically hit while at wounded 2, she would go straight to dying 4 and die, barring having hero points. But yeah, it can get scary. Sornbor is going to delay, which is something you can do in Pathfinder, so that Billy can act first. Billy will try to demoralize that homunculus. He's a scary dude. He has a +5, and that 18 will succeed at making it frightened 1. And when it is frightened, it has a -1 penalty to all of its checks and all of its DCs, and that includes its armor class. And it ticks down at the end of the homunculus's turn. But this is a powerful debuff that can be used to great effect against strong creatures, boss creatures. Sornbor thinks it's now time for this kobold to stop messing around and head towards the kobold. Kobold's going to drop everything and take out his spear and then ready a spear attack. Arthur knows where the homunculus is. It's only hidden to Arthur. When something is hidden to you, you have to make a flat check of 11 or higher, just a d20 roll without any modifiers. This fails, and he can use his hero points on this as well. It works on any d20 check, and that succeeds. He next is going to do his attack roll. That cover is going to prevent that from hitting. So he's going to spend his last hero point on this. He is really annoyed by this thing, and that will hit. It falls into the pit. Lewis is going to try to stabilize. It ticks down to dying 2. Billy takes out his healing potion and will apply that to Lewis. which brings Lewis to positive hit points. Sorenbor is going to proceed forward. After raising his shield, he's going to raise his shield first because he knows this attack is coming. And the Kobold Warrior is going to make that attack. Sorenbor is ready to tank, so let's see if that succeeds. Oh, that is a critical hit from the spear. Whoa, 16 damage, a lot of damage. And Sorenbor is actually going to interpose with his shield and cause his shield to break. So with his shield block reaction. The Kobold Warrior is going to now stab at Sorenbor, who no longer is benefiting from a shield, and fail. The Kobold Warrior is going to scurry away. Arthur is going to next attack, and 20 is going to hit for a nice 7 damage. I repositioned people a little so I could show one last thing. It's been a long day. But Billy can move right here on his turn, and feint. Feint is an action if he has melee reach against somebody. It's like create a diversion, but it makes them hidden to his next attack against it. Billy is trained in deception, so he's going to do that and succeed against his perception DC. If he had critically succeeded, it would be flat-footed to Billy until the end of Billy's next turn. But it's only a regular success, so it only works against his next attack. And that is enough. And will do 11 damage, knocking out the Kobold Warrior. Another thing he could have done was to pick up the light hammer from Lewis's inventory and then throw it at the Kobold Warrior. So let's say he did that. It's a martial weapon, so Billy's proficient with it. With thrown weapons, he uses his dexterity modifier, just like with any range attack. And because it's beyond the first range increment, it's going to have a -2 penalty. And this hits. With thrown weapons, he gets to add his full strength bonus to the attack. So that's the advantage of thrown weapons. This applies to darts, to star knives. The only thing is that thrown weapons benefit from having both good dexterity and strength. And this 8 damage would also defeat the Kobold Warrior to cheers. And the crowd goes wild, cheering on the new champions, the new level 1 human fighter champions.